Hi, this is Mike Boland, analyst with BI Kelsey, and welcome to our ongoing series on presentations of the things we are seeing and doing and hearing in the wide world of local media and technology. So today I'm going to go over pretty quickly some of the top trends that I'm seeing driving location-based marketing, particularly around evolving smartphone use and what a lot of advertisers are doing, what a lot of ad tech providers and ad networks are doing for best practices. So this is a quick thumbnail of some of the biggest things we're seeing right now. So a good place to start any discussion like this is to look at user behavior. So right now, US smartphone penetration is 72% in the US. 25% of search query volume is mobile. Now, search, of course, is just one form of mobile engagement, but it's one that I believe is leading in a lot of ways and also is very indicative of user intent. So it's one I like to look at a lot, and you'll see it coming up throughout this presentation. Now, 50% of mobile search is local, and that's very important because if you compare that to the desktop, only 20% of desktop search has that same local intent to do or to buy or to see or to eat something in one's local vicinity. Now, that's one of the many inputs that goes into the forecasting we do. So I do a forecast about twice a year that looks at mobile ad revenues in the US. Now, we see that amount going from 7 billion or 7.2 billion, excuse me, in 2013 to over 30 billion in 2018. And that includes search, and it includes SMS and display and mobile social native ads like Facebook, sponsored stories, and Twitter and Instagram and many others that are developing that format. But one of the other kind of breakdowns or segmentation in the overall figures is the portion of that ad spend that is location targeted. And we'll get into what we mean by location targeted in just a minute. But it's important to note that it's growing from 40% of the total last year up to 52% of the total in 2018. Now, it's also important to note that the vast majority of that spend is national advertisers and brands and agencies that are localizing their campaigns in various ways. Often when people hear the term local, they think SMB. However, mobile advertising hasn't really moved down market yet in earnest. We believe it will, but right now the majority of the ad spend are national advertisers that are localizing their campaigns. So a question is, why is it growing to be the majority of ad spend by the end of our forecast period? A lot of that goes back to the usage metrics I just mentioned. User behavior in mobile is clearly skewing towards localized intent. So we're starting to see advertisers likewise catch on to that trend and trail behind the user behavior, as advertisers tend to do with any emerging media, and really start to develop demand for location-targeted campaigns and tactics in seeing that there is a lot of valuable leads and tangible lead forms that is coming from it. So further in support of that, again, looking at search as kind of a representative example of the trends we're seeing, 73% of searches, or mobile searches, excuse me, trigger additional actions and conversions. Now, it's important to note that a lot of those are very local in nature. So we're talking about things like calling a business or making a purchase or visiting a store. These things are very local in nature. They're very actionable and tangible, and they're very valued by a lot of high-value verticals in local, such as autos and restaurants and retail. Now, not only are these conversions happening at high frequency, they're also happening quickly. This is important because of those 73% of searches that are leading to conversions, 55% of those are happening within 1 hour of the initial search. Now, this tells me that it's really proving out what we've been saying for years, that mobile users are indeed lower funnel. They are indeed high intent, high immediacy, out and about searchers. They're literally an hour away from a conversion. So therefore, the ability and the opportunity to influence them at this key decision-making moment is heightened. So the lesson here really is, if you are not optimizing campaigns and optimizing content delivery with the proper calls to action to capture that user intent, it's really missing an opportunity. Now, an important question is, what do I mean by calls to action and tactics to capture that intent and localize campaigns? And that's where we get to some of the definitions of how location targeting is playing out. I promised earlier we'd go over a few definitions, and here's really a sample of some of the ways that location-targeted tactics are really starting to happen. And this is really just a sample of many of the different things that we're seeing. So often when we talk about location targeting, it's people often don't stop to kind of define what we mean by that. So at its very basic level, it's kind of the location targeting that most people often think of when they hear the term, which is the geofencing or the placing ads within certain geographies that are within a campaign's targets based on users that happen to be there or store locations that happen to be there. So it's the geo-targeted aspects of a campaign, where the ad shows up. But interestingly, that branches out into a lot more kind of nuanced areas that are developing, not just where the ad shows up, but what it contains. So things like having dynamically placed call buttons or directions that automatically call on the information of the closest store. And this is very relevant for multi-location businesses. Again, that represent a lot of the mobile local ad spend. Mobile product information is key. Mobile users, because they are lower funnel, tend to be past research stages where their searches usually tend to involve specific model numbers or specific brands. So having real-time product inventory about what products are on the shelf and nearby tend to perform well. Google's done this with its product listing ads. We see other data providers like Retailagents doing interesting things around product search. Also, the ad creative is important in grounding that in certain geographic terminology. The example here is things such as dynamic distance feeds within the banner ad that show you at any given time dynamically how far away the closest store is that's being advertised. That's proven to really boost the relevance of the ad and gain a lot of user attention. And then lastly, a representative example of the way that these things are playing out, when we're talking about dynamic creative, not just the location and distance from a store, but location-related variables. One good example is weather. So to be able to programmatically and dynamically change offers or change messaging based on the weather, which tends to certainly impact user interest in certain products. So a very simple example is hot coffee when it's cold out and iced coffee when it's warm out. And you can imagine how that develops into lots of different areas for different weather patterns and different product areas. So one important point is this is all actually working. So these are data from Verve Mobile, representative of a lot of the ad tech providers and ad networks that we're seeing that are mostly reporting that when a lot of these tactics, location targeting ad campaign tactics, are applied, it's certainly seeing results. Up to a 2x increase in click-through rates. But more importantly than just click-through rates are secondary actions, or what we like to call post-click activity. These are the calls and the directions and the store visits that, again, are very valued by a lot of local business categories as very tangible leads that get you closer to a tangible conversion in terms of reporting and analytics. Another example is XAD. Through executing a lot of these strategies, they saw a 52% in click-through rates for their client Columbia Sportswear. They also saw a high frequency of post-click activity such as store visits, directions, calls, and product details. So how did they do this? They had a banner ad that had a dynamic distance feed indicator similar to what I just described. That engaged a lot of users to click. Once they did, they saw an optimized landing page that had calls to action front and center, such as calling the business and getting directions. And when I say optimized, it's important to note that on the desktop, you might see things like phone numbers and directions buried further below the fold or even on different tabs, because that is appropriate to the use case. Because of evolving user behavior, XAD has discovered that optimized landing pages for certain products should have off the bat, should hit you with a phone number and directions. Through this, they're seeing a lot of success in terms of performance lift. and ROI for the advertiser. So what I'll do is leave you with this final point, which relates to things such as calls and directions and some of these calls to actions that I've been dwelling on throughout this presentation, because it's often forgotten due to all the attention paid to e-commerce that when we're talking about mobile, everyone seems to be talking about m-commerce, which is the mobile version of e-commerce. So in other words, ordering things on your phone to be shipped to your home in the style of e-commerce. So Amazon, Zappos, a lot of those players. But it's often forgotten that the true opportunity with mobile is going to be happening offline. If you look at US retail spending, only about 7% of it happens in e-commerce, and a small slice of that is m-commerce. The vast majority is that 93% is happening all offline in physical stores. But we don't want to discount mobile and desktop because those are increasingly playing a part in influencing that offline conversion. And that's happening to the tune of about $1.4 trillion in US ad spending. So really the point here is, if you have a business for which conversions happen offline, and if you are not optimizing mobile campaigns in some of the ways we're talking about in driving a lot of this offline spending, you might be missing out on 40% of your addressable market. So I guess I'll leave you with that kind of tough love point, and there are a lot of things within that presentation that really deserve further drill downs. And that's really, we hope, a conversation starter for kind of digging into a lot of those areas, finding out more about best practices in location-targeted ad tactics. But this is really meant to be an overview. We hope to engage with you further through this ongoing video series and the other places where we have a presence in our written reports, in our conferences. Here's my contact information if you want to engage further or find out how we can work together. I look forward to hearing from you, and look forward to any of these future video presentations. We'll be creating a lot more of them, as well as conference footage and lots more multimedia and ways to continue educating the marketplace on the things we're doing and seeing. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.